Our series of most anticipated videos has returned for 2015. This series will chronicle all of our most anticipated upcoming games through March of this year. The next in our series of previews is the PS4 exclusive Bloodborne. The Souls franchise, created by developers From Software, has become a mainstay of the hardcore and speedrunning gaming communities. The series is known for its old-school difficulty. It's dark and unforgiving, which creates an overwhelming feeling of confidence with each victory over foes both big and small. Well, forget all that. We're told that Bloodborne is not a Souls game, though it sees the return of Hidetaka Miyazaki to the director's chair, and features core mechanics and gameplay concepts consistent with the Souls series. Let's take a look at this not a Souls game, not a sequel, that is set to be a PS4 exclusive and one of our most anticipated of 2015. Bloodborne was first leaked as Project Beast through a series of screenshots and a trailer ahead of E3 2014. Speculation and rumor from the leak suggested that this game was a spiritual successor to the Souls series, but would be released by Sony Japan, thus returning the franchise to its PlayStation roots. More rumors suggested that, due to the Sony connection, Project Beast would be a direct sequel to the original Demon's Souls. The speculation was laid to rest at E3 when Project Beast was finally announced as Bloodborne, a PS3 exclusive, and confirmed as being directed by Miyazaki. Development of the game began immediately following the release of the Artorias of the Abyss DLC for Dark Souls. This explains why Miyazaki's role in Dark Souls 2 was simply as a supervisor. He was directing and developing Bloodborne concurrently. The director related a desire to create a game in the Victorian era, but had previously felt that consoles lacked the horsepower to deliver on the intricacy and detail befitting the time period. As the PS4 approached and their exclusive partnership was renewed following the multi-platform release of Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, Sony had a strong desire for a new IP. Miyazaki saw this as the opportunity to capitalize on his Victorian vision, one that is dark and terrifying. Call it a sequel in everything but name, or call it a spiritual successor, it's clear that the core of Bloodborne is decidedly Soulsian. It's a third-person action game with an emphasis on melee combat and a high difficulty level. Yet there are compelling differences and divergent gameplay mechanics that seek to meld with a new setting in order to set this game apart from its gaming ancestors. Gameplay videos and alpha test feedback exhibits combat that is definitely accelerated. Enemies are quicker and more aggressive than ever before, requiring players to at times strike first rather than always playing in a careful, reactive, slower pace style. Foes will no longer spawn in set places and remain mostly static in their movements. Instead, they will scout and survey areas of the city according to their individual logic, occasionally even traveling in groups or converging on set points in large crowds. This will create some difficult situations for the player, encouraging them to draw individuals away from the crowd or attempt to avoid combat altogether. There will be ways for your character to be defensive, however shields are not one of them. Appropriate to the Victorian-style setting, the game is no longer filled with medieval-style armor and weaponry. In place of your shield, you will have firearms. So far, only the pistol and blunderbuss have been revealed. Firearms can be used to help manage crowds or stun enemies that get up close, but are considered secondary weapons and produce less damage than melee weapons. The combat system is mostly familiar here for Souls players. Melee weapons will have a light and heavy attack, and dodging is crucial to avoiding damage. Significantly missing, and admittedly scary to average players, are not only shields, but also the blocking and parrying mechanics. This includes backstabbing. Replacing these are backstrike and countershot. Backstrike requires hitting an enemy with a heavy attack from behind and then following up with a light attack as the enemy begins to collapse. Countershot involves stunning the enemy with a firearm prior to their attack, and again following it up with a light attack. Each of these attacks will do large amounts of damage, but will be more difficult to execute than the old parry attacks of previous games, particularly when crowds of enemies are involved. Distressing to some, weapon choices and playstyles seem to be tied to the character you select. Notice I say character here and not class. A character select screen for Bloodborne displays 4 choices: standard, heavy, sword and heavy attack, and agile. This suggests a distinct lack of customization that may turn off veteran players. A certain level of tweaking will be allowed via transformable weapons. It remains to be seen what exactly this means, but it is suggested that you can adapt the weapons to suit your gameplay style. Item usage and gathering will be familiar to Souls regulars. Items will be found on bodies and crates, both out in the open and hidden, and of course, dropped by enemies. In Bloodborne, you restore health in 2 ways: blood vials, which are permanently mapped to the triangle button, and the regain system, which is actually a part of combat. Regain works by taking the risk of immediately striking an opponent that has just struck you. In previous games, most players would back off immediately and heal. Here, an immediate and successful counterstrike allows the player to regain at least a portion of the health lost in the previous attack. Bloodborne takes place in the city of It's a place of high Victorian Gothic architecture and rumored home to a medicinal cure of some sort. Those afflicted by the disease begin a pilgrimage to the city in search of medicine, but are instead met by a decaying and diseased place filled with horror and madness. Our character is one such pilgrim. The full story is being kept under wraps, but the key to both the origin of the disease and its cure is most certainly in the title of the game. It is Bloodborne, and it infests the city, its visitors, and its inhabitants, driving them mad and possibly twisting them into beasts, or the beast the origins of the disease itself. From has done a great job of keeping their story under wraps so far. Another surprising difference from the Souls games is the departure of composer Motoi Sakuraba. Sakuraba created the music for both of the Dark Souls games, following the work of Shinsuke Kida, who composed for Demon Souls. There was some trepidation when the composer was announced as Michael Wandmacher, an American composer with a resume full of unmistakably B-movie entries and television work. The quality of the films and very few games on his work history gave many people pause. Nonetheless, it's obvious that Wandmacher has done his homework, as what little we have been able to hear of the game's music matches the tone and style of both the dark Victorian setting and the previous works of Sakuraba and Kida. The trend appears to be to let the sound designers have full reign in representing the mood when outside of combat and letting the music do the work inside. The music depicts gloom and desolation, graduating into frenzied madness as the action picks up. Everything is punctuated by choral jabs that bring terror to the pieces. We look forward to hearing more. Of course, by now you've noticed how often we've mentioned the Souls series. Though this is meant to be a standalone IP, how could we not? The Souls DNA is found in nearly every facet of what we've seen in this game. However, we hope that throughout this preview, particularly in the gameplay discussion, we've shown, or more accurately, Bloodborne has shown, how it stands on its own. We haven't even mentioned the co-op features, summoning much like Dark Souls 2, which will allow for 3 players, or the procedurally generated shareable dungeons known as Chalice Dungeons, randomly generated difficult dungeons that you can challenge your friends with, as our focus here is single player. From Software has developed a specific style of game that dates back to the PlayStation era with the Kingsfield series. That series was a foundation for what became Demon Souls, and so too Demon Souls was the jumping off point for the creation of Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2. Bloodborne feels like the next evolution of From style. It is their, dare we use the seemingly dirty word, accessible new IP, ready for new players and old alike. It may lose a few diehards due to combat changes, a feeling of some linearity, or loss of customization options. It may lose some new players due to a locked frame rate. Regardless, we really like what we're seeing from Bloodborne, making it one of our most anticipated of 2015. Alright everybody, thank you for watching. I'm Reagan, I did the video work for this most anticipated video, and James Schumacher wrote the companion article. Be on the lookout for our Battlefield Hardline video, which is coming next Tuesday. Thanks for watching, see you guys later.